The hallway buzzed with the kind of mid-morning chaos that only high school could brew. Sneakers squeaking on linoleum, lockers slamming, half-shouted jokes, the rustle of backpacks, and laughter echoing down the rows. Then came the silence. It was sudden, dense, like the air itself held its breath, and then came the sound, a snap, sharp and awful, like fabric being torn in church. But it wasn't fabric. It was hair. Amara froze. Time didn't slow. It stopped. One moment she was walking to her locker, headphones halfway on, hand in her bag, thinking about geometry class and the sketch she wanted to finish later. The next she felt the awful pull at the nape of her neck, then a sickening weightlessness. Something that had always been there was suddenly gone. She turned. Lucas stood behind her, grinning, holding it, a long, thick braid, hers. People gasped. Phones came out. Someone said, "Bro, what the hell?" But no one moved. No one stopped him. Amara looked at the braid in his hand like it wasn't hers. Like maybe this was a dream or a prank or a mistake. But it wasn't, and she knew it. Her stomach twisted. Her eyes burned. Her knees didn't buckle, though they begged to. She swallowed hard. Her hands trembled, but she didn't cover her head. She didn't run. She stepped forward. Lucas's grin faltered just a little. No one expected her to speak. But she did. "You think that's funny?" Her voice shook, but not from fear. From something bigger. Fury. There it was. In her gut, in her chest, rising like heat. Lucas chuckled, still cocky. "It's just hair. Chill." A teacher finally pushed through the crowd. "What's going on here?" But the damage had been done. Not just to her hair, but to something deeper. Something that had held together through years of silence, of blending in, of being good. It snapped that day, just like the braid. Amara picked up what was left of it from the ground. She looked around at the faces, some shocked, some entertained, some blank. She saw her so-called friends frozen, unsure. No one stepped in. Not yet. She took one last look at Lucas. "You don't get to decide who I am," she said. And then she walked, not to the bathroom to cry, not to the office to beg. She walked straight to the front of the school, to be seen, on her terms, and for the first time everyone really saw her. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Before the hallway, before the braid, there was the kitchen table, sticky with syrup from morning waffles and cluttered with unpaid bills shoved into a plastic container labeled important stuff. That's where Amara learned silence. Her mother, Denise, was fierce in her own quiet way. She worked 2 jobs, housekeeping at a downtown hotel in the mornings, cashier at a 24-hour grocery store at night. Her eyes always looked like they needed more sleep than her schedule could afford. Her voice was soft but firm. She loved Amara fiercely. She just didn't always have the words or time to say it. "Keep your head down. Don't draw attention." "Stay out of trouble," was her love language. Amara obeyed. Mostly. At home, the TV played reruns of Moshe and Living Single. Amara used to think those women on screen were superheroes. Confident, loud, unapologetically black. She'd sit on the floor sketching them in her spiral notebook, dreaming up new outfits for each scene. In real life, she wore oversized hoodies and old sneakers from Ross. Her hair was always done, though, always. Her mom didn't let her slack on that. Every Sunday night, no matter how tired she was, Denise would part, twist, braid, oil. "Your hair is your crown, baby," she'd say. "Don't ever let anyone make you ashamed of it." But school was different. At Jefferson High, crowns were targets. Amara was one of the few black girls in a school where white and light-skinned faces lined the hallways and the yearbook covers. Teachers mispronounced her name every year, despite her correcting them. Amara, she'd say. Like camera with an A. They'd still call her Amanda or Mariah. She'd laugh it off, smile. She'd learned from her mom that it was better to be small than to be right, but it built up. That feeling, like your voice lived just below the surface of your skin but couldn't quite break through. Like the moment you did say something, you'd become that girl. The angry one, the loud one, the problem. So she swallowed it, all of it, Even when the comments came. You talk so proper. You don't sound black. Do you even wash your hair? Why's it always in braids? Can't you wear it normal? She never told her mom. Never wanted to add that to the pile of things already weighing on her. She had one outlet, her art. She'd fill entire notebooks with portraits, black women with big hair, glowing skin, fierce eyes, her alter egos, her dreams. Each sketch was louder than she was allowed to be. Then there was Miss Taylor, her art teacher, and maybe the only adult at Jefferson who saw her. "You've got something powerful in you," she once told Amara, looking over a drawing. "Don't let this place shrink it." But most days, Amara did shrink, just enough to fit in the cracks, smile when she wanted to scream, nod when she wanted to vanish. Lucas had been around for years, loud, rich quarterback energy. He wasn't just a bully, he was protected. His dad donated to the football team. His sister was class president last year. He was untouchable. He never looked twice at Amara, until he did. And the day he cut her hair, he didn't just slice through strands. He cut straight through the version of her that had been trained to be silent. Because when she picked up that braid from the floor, she didn't just pick up hair. She picked up every reason she'd ever been told to stay small. And she made a decision. That was the last day she'd ever bite her tongue. The silence in the car ride home was louder than anything Lucas ever said. Amara sat in the passenger seat, still clutching the Ziploc bag the school nurse gave her. Inside, the cut braid looked limp and sad, like it had lost its purpose. Her mom hadn't said much when the school called, just that familiar sigh, the one Amara had heard 1,000 times before, the sigh of someone too tired to cry, too used to bad news. Now, behind the wheel, Denise tapped the steering wheel with her chipped nails. The tension in her jaw made her profile sharp as stone. "So, what happened?" she finally asked, eyes on the road. "He cut my hair," Amara said flatly. "I mean, why?" That stung. Like maybe Amara had provoked it, like maybe she'd done something. "I don't know, he just did," she muttered. Denise exhaled, long and tight. "That boy's daddy's probably got the school wrapped around his pinky finger," she said. "And now they're going to want to make it like you're the one causing trouble." "I didn't cause anything. I'm just saying. You need to think smart about how you handle this." There it was again. That invisible rule book Denise always lived by. Don't make waves, don't talk too loud. Don't be the angry black girl. Don't. Amara turned to the window. "He humiliated me in front of everybody and, you want me to think smart?" "I want you to be safe," her mother snapped, voice sharper than usual. "You think I don't know what this world does to girls who fight back?" Amara stared at her, tears prickling. "So I'm just supposed to stay quiet? Let people walk all over me?" "No," Denise said, softer now. "I just don't want you to be the one who ends up punished for speaking the truth." They pulled into the driveway, headlights cutting across the patchy lawn. The porch light flickered like it always did. Inside, Amara dropped her backpack and headed for the bathroom. She shut the door and stared at herself in the mirror. The cut was jagged, uneven. Her scalp was visible in places it shouldn't be. She looked like a puzzle someone had started solving, then gave up on. Her fingers hovered over the damage. She didn't cry, she wanted to, but her chest felt locked. There was a knock. "Baby." Her mum's voice was soft again. "You want me to help fix it?" Amara hesitated, but then, "No, I got it." Denise stood on the other side of the door for a few seconds, then shuffled back down the hallway. That's how their love worked. Cautious, quiet, unspoken. Amara took a deep breath and grabbed the scissors from under the sink. If someone was going to change her, it wasn't going to be him. She began cutting the rest of the braids off one by one, her hands shaking only a little. Each snip echoed in the bathroom like a defiant drumbeat. Snip, 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 hair fell to the floor like feathers. This wasn't surrender, this was war paint. Monday morning, the halls looked exactly the same cracked tile near the science wing, the same flickering light above the vending machine, the same smell of overcooked cafeteria pizza. But nothing felt the same to Amara. She walked in with her chin up, short curls framing her face like armor. She'd spent Saturday night twisting what was left of her hair into a fresh shape. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and she wore it like it was a crown made of fire. Still, the stares were real. Some students looked away quickly, guilty. Others watched like she was a walking news story. And then there were the whispers. "Yo, that's the girl from the video. She really shaved her head. Honestly, it doesn't look that bad. She made it worse for herself." She kept walking. But her stomach was doing flips. She spotted Maya and Brielle near their lockers, her two closest friends since sophomore year. At least she thought they were. They hadn't texted her all weekend. "Not even a 'you good, Maya'?" Amara called softly. They turned. Their eyes flicked to her hair, then away. "Hey," Maya said, half smiling. You okay?" "You didn't text," Amara said, her voice steady. Brielle shrugged. "We just figured you needed space." Space? Was that what they called it now, space, when you watched your friend get humiliated and said nothing? Amara folded her arms. "Y'all saw what happened. You didn't say a word, didn't even check on me." Maya looked guilty. "I didn't know what to do. It all happened so fast." "You could have said something," Amara said, "to him, to the teacher, to me." "We didn't want to make it worse for you," Brielle added quickly. Amara blinked. There it was again. That twisted kind of concern that looked like care but felt like betrayal. "I'm already the one who got violated. How much worse can it get?" Neither girl had an answer. Amara turned and walked away. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't cry. She was done crying for people who only stood next to her when it was easy. Later that day, she found a folded note in her locker. It was from Sofia Martinez, a quiet girl from her U.S. history class. "Amara, I saw what happened. I'm sorry I didn't do anything." I froze. "But I wanted you to know, I think you're brave, and if you ever want to talk, I'm here. You shouldn't have to go through this alone." Amara stared at the note for a long time. It was small, but it was something. That night she stared at her reflection again. No long braids, no safety net, no fake friends, and somehow she still stood. She pulled out her sketchbook, flipped past pages of women with perfect hair, and started drawing something new. A girl, with short coils, head high, eyes burning, fists clenched. A fighter. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Amara. And her mum sat in the front office across from a framed motivational quote that felt like a slap. "Respect is earned." The assistant principal, Mr. Collins, sat across from them, tall, white, early 40s, and deeply uncomfortable. He kept smoothing out his tie like it was choking him. Beside him, Principal Donovan, a black woman in her 50s with short grey hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, stayed mostly silent, flipping through a file labeled A. Johnson, Amara. Noticed it was thin, like her whole experience could be summed up in 2 pages. "Thank you both for coming in," Mr. Collins began, in that fake, calm voice people use when they're trying to sound professional but not actually say anything meaningful. "First of all, I want to acknowledge that what happened Friday was deeply unfortunate." "Unfortunate," Denise said, eyebrows raised. Mr. Collins cleared his throat. "Yes, we're taking this matter seriously." "So what's the punishment?" Amara asked, voice cool and even. Principal Donovan finally looked up. "Lucas has been given a 3-day suspension." 3 days? Amara repeated. "He assaulted me, in public. There's a video." "We understand," Mr. Collins jumped. But given his academic record and the fact that he's a minor, I'm a minor too," Amara cut in. There was a beat of silence. "Lucas's parents have expressed their regret," he continued. "They're willing to offer a formal apology." Amara's fists clenched in her lap. "He didn't make a mistake, he meant to do it. And now I'm supposed to just accept an apology and pretend it didn't happen." "This isn't about pretending," Donovan said. "It's about resolution, about moving forward as a community." That word, community, landed like poison. Down Amara's throat. Whose community? Lucas's, the football teams, the school boards? Because from where she was sitting, it felt like the community had already picked a side. Back in class later that day, Lucas wasn't even there. He'd taken the suspension as a mini-vacation, according to someone on Snapchat, spotted at the mall, smiling. Meanwhile, Amara sat in sixth period, while kids still whispered and stared like she was the one who brought the storm. After the bell, she walked straight to Ms. Taylor's art room. It was her only safe space in the whole building. "I need to talk," she said, not even waiting to be asked. Ms. Taylor put down the paintbrush in her hand. "Sit." Amara told her everything. The hallway, the Ziploc bag, the meeting, the insult of 3 days. Ms. Taylor listened. No judgment, no interruptions, just quiet strength. "You know," she finally said, "when I was your age, they told us to be grateful for just being allowed in the room." Ter smiled, to not complain. "Sounds familiar," Amara muttered. "But there's something they didn't count on," Ms. Taylor continued. "They didn't expect us to speak. And when we finally did, they had no idea what to do." Amara sat with that for a second. "What if I went public?" she asked. Ms. Taylor raised an eyebrow. "Like social media?" Amara nodded. "So there's a video already going around. What if I told my side of it? All of it?" Ms. Taylor didn't answer right away. She studied Amara like she was a painting she hadn't fully finished yet. "If you do this," she said slowly, "you can't shrink again. Once you speak, they'll come for you. Some will support you, a lot won't." Amara nodded. "I know." Ms. Taylor leaned back. "Then speak." That night, Amara opened the TikTok app and hit record. She looked directly into the camera. "My name is Amara Johnson. I'm 15. I go to Jefferson High. And last Friday, a white boy cut my hair in the hallway in front of everyone." She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She told the truth, not just about what happened, but what it meant. She hit post before she could talk herself out of it. Within 2 hours, it had 18,000 views. By morning, over $100,000. The comments were pouring in. "This is horrifying. You're so brave. I went through the same thing in 8th grade and stayed silent. You're giving voice to all of us. We got your back, sis." And one that stuck out the most: "You're not alone anymore." The TikTok was still blowing up. By Tuesday morning, it had cleared 500,000 views. Her inbox was full of DMs from strangers, classmates, even girls from other schools across the country. People who'd been silent about their own stories suddenly found the words, "But Amara." She still wasn't sure what to say. Fame, even the righteous kind, felt weird. The next day she woke up early, earlier than usual. The sun hadn't cracked the sky yet, and the house was quiet. Her mom was still asleep after a late shift, the TV humming faint static in the background. Amara tiptoed past the creaky floorboard in the hallway and locked herself in the bathroom. She stood in front of the mirror and stared at her new hair. Short, coily, unapologetic. She ran her fingers through it slowly, feeling the texture, the resistance, the life in it. For years she'd been taught to tame it, stretch it, braid it tight enough to make her scalp scream. Neat hair is respectful hair, they'd said. But that morning, for the first time, she didn't see messy. She saw her truth, her fight, her roots. Later, she sat on the living room floor, surrounded by old family photo albums. One in particular caught her eye, a Polaroid from the 90s, her mom in a denim vest, dark lipstick, and a perfectly round afro that demanded attention. She looked young, wild, beautiful. Another photo, her grandmother, standing on a porch in Mississippi, her hair in thick twists, barefoot, eyes defiant. These women didn't just wear their hair, they wore history. Amara touched her own coils, again softer this time. This wasn't just about what Lucas did in that hallway. This was about generations of being told her hair wasn't enough, that she wasn't enough, and she was done believing it. By lunch, she walked through the cafeteria, like she was floating. Not because she was trying to be bold, but because she felt whole, grounded. "Yo, Amara," someone called. It was Sophia from history class, the one who'd left the note. She was standing at a table with 2 other girls Amara didn't know well. "We saved you a seat," Sophia said, her voice nervous but real. Amara paused. Her old table, the one where Maya and Brielle used to wave her over, sat across the room. They looked at her, but didn't say anything, didn't smile. She nodded once, then turned and sat with Sophia. The food sucked. The jokes were awkward, but it felt safe, more real than anything had in a long time. That night, Amara posted again. Not a rant, not a tearful update, just a video of her twisting her curls while Solange's "Don't Touch My Hair" played. In the background, the caption, "This is mine, always was," it went viral in under 2 hours. Comment after comment flooded in. "This hit my soul. Your hair is revolutionary. You are. Black girls everywhere needed this today." But the best one, "You're turning pain into power, and baby girl, like your crown is glowing." By Wednesday, it wasn't just TikTok watching, it was local news. Emails from journalists started landing in Amara's inbox. A reporter from Channel 7 News left a voicemail for her mom. "We're looking to cover a recent incident involving your daughter," and the growing social media response. Denise nearly dropped her phone when she heard it. "Lord, what did you do?" "I told the truth," Amara said calmly, loading her backpack. "And people listened." Her mom shook her head slowly. "You're turning heads, baby. Just make sure you don't lose yours in the process." At school, the energy had shifted, not just in whispers, but in policy. Suddenly, there were announcements about respectful conduct and harassment prevention. Teachers were required to attend a last-minute diversity training in the library. Flyers about student well-being started showing up in bathrooms and lockers, but nobody said her name. Lucas hadn't returned. Rumor was his parents pulled him out temporarily for his safety. Some people called it damage control. Some called it privilege. Amara just called it typical. Ms. Taylor stopped her after class. "The district's watching now," she said quietly. "I just heard we've got school board members coming to Jefferson next week for a climate review. That doesn't happen unless things get real." "They are real," Amara said. "Now they're just being watched." Ms. Taylor nodded. "Keep your voice steady, Amara. They'll try to twist it." "I'm not twisting anything. I'm done hiding." And she meant it. The tipping point came that night. A parent at a PTA meeting recorded a clip of another mum, a white woman in a red blazer, standing up and saying, "Why is my child being forced to sit through lectures about racial trauma? What happened to that girl is sad, but this is being blown out of proportion." That clip hit Facebook, then Twitter, then Instagram, and then all hell broke loose. Comments exploded with rage and support. Hashtags popped up. Chak Amara's voice, God Chaks, protect black girls. Hair is not just hair teachers started messaging Amara privately, saying they were sorry. Some admitted they hadn't known how to speak up. Others still stayed silent. But the line was being drawn. People were choosing sides. And Amara, she was already standing in the middle of the storm, eyes wide open. That night, she sat at her desk sketching a new piece. It wasn't just her anymore. She drew a hallway, cracked linoleum, lockers dented, and in the center, a dozen black girls standing shoulder to shoulder. Every style of hair imaginable, locks, braids, froze, twist-outs, silk presses, each one glowing like a halo. And at the front, a girl holding scissors, not as a weapon, as a symbol, a beginning. It started with a whisper, then a text, then a flood. Thursday morning, Amara's phone buzzed with a message from Sophia. "Student protest tomorrow, 10:15 a.m. We're walking out. You in?" Her heart stuttered. She hadn't organized anything. She hadn't made a flyer. She hadn't asked to be a leader. But somehow she'd become one. Later that day, she met Sophia in the art room, along with a few other students. She barely knew Jalen from the basketball team, Hannah from choir, Ray with the galaxy-dyed curls who always wore combat boots, and Amina, a freshman with quiet eyes and a fierce voice when she spoke. "We can't let the school pretend this didn't happen," Sophia said, "and we can't let them erase you." "We're not asking for anything crazy," Ray added, "just a real policy, a real response, real consequences." Amara looked at them, her mind spinning. "You really think people will walk out?" "They already said they will," Amina answered without hesitation. "They're just waiting for someone to say it out loud." They made the flyer on Canva during lunch. Student walkout. Friday, 10:15 a.m. Racism, silence, injustice. We won't stand for it, Meet at the front steps. Wear black. Bring your voice. Amara hesitated before hitting send. Then she posted it to her Instagram story, and TikTok and Twitter. No turning back now that night. Her mom was folding laundry when she saw the post. "You planning to get suspended?" she asked, not even looking up from a hoodie. "I'm planning." "To be heard," Amara replied. Denise sighed. "You're brave, baby, but you still gotta live in this world." "I know," Amara said. "That's why I'm doing it." Her mom looked at her then, really looked, and after a long pause said something she hadn't said in years. "I'm proud of you." Amara's throat tightened. "I'm scared," she whispered. Denise nodded. "Me too. But maybe that means it matters." Friday, 10:14 a.m. The tension in the hallways was thick enough to taste. Teachers were on edge. Security guards posted by the doors. Whispers turned to nods. Then footsteps. Then a rush. Doors opened, and students poured out. Dozens. Then hundreds. Some held signs. "My hair is not a joke. Protect black students." "We deserve more than 3 days." Amara stepped out onto the front steps of Jefferson High. The sun hit her skin like it was proud of her too. She turned around and saw what she never expected. Nearly the entire junior class. Kids from every grade, every background, some chanting, some quiet, all showing up. Sophia handed her a megaphone. Amara stared at it. "This was never supposed to be about me," she whispered. "It's bigger than you now," Sophia said. "But you started it." Amara took the megaphone, and for the first time she didn't feel small. She raised it to her lips and let the truth spill. "We are not just students. We are not just numbers. We are not just hairstyles or quotas or afterthoughts. We are human, and we are done being silent." Cheers erupted. Phones recorded. The press showed up and the school couldn't hide anymore. By Monday, Amara felt like the whole city was watching. Local news stations had been broadcasting the walkout, and stories were popping up in every online news outlet, some supporting her, others criticizing her methods. But the real heat, that was coming from inside Jefferson High. Principal Donovan called an emergency assembly, the kind where the bleachers were packed and the air felt like it had been sucked out of the gym. Amara sat in the front row, arms crossed. She wasn't going to sit quietly, but she wasn't going to back down either. When Donovan stepped up to the mic, she knew exactly what was coming. "Good morning, students," she began, voice steady but cold. "I want to address the recent events surrounding last Friday's walkout. What you may not know is that Jefferson High is a place of tradition, and in these traditions we've always valued respect, order, and unity." Her gaze flicked toward Amara for a split second, just long enough for Amara to feel the weight of it. Unfortunately, these values were disregarded, and I'm here to say that while we respect your right to protest, we will not condone disruptive behavior that undermines our school's mission. A few students clapped, but Amara felt her chest tighten. "We will be enforcing disciplinary measures for those involved," Donovan continued, "and we are working to address this issue through proper channels. I urge everyone to consider the consequences of their actions." Amara's blood boiled. Proper channels, that's what they were calling it. This was the same proper channel that had suspended her attacker for 3 days, with no real consequences, no real change. Lucas had been gone for a week now. The school was trying to sweep it under the rug, pretend it wasn't as big of a deal as it was, and now they were punishing the students who had the audacity to demand accountability. The rest of the assembly was a blur. Speeches from teachers, trying to downplay the protest, lectures about academic excellence and keeping Jefferson's reputation intact. When the bell rang and everyone filed out of the gym, it felt like Amara's chest had collapsed in on itself. She didn't have time to think. She had to act. At lunch, she found Sophia in the cafeteria, sitting with Ray and Amina. They were all talking in low voices, watching the crowd. "What happened?" Sophia asked when she saw the look on Amara's face. "They're retaliating," Amara said, voice tight. "Donovan's suspending people who walked out, and they're trying to act like it wasn't a big deal, like we're just being dramatic." "Of course," Ray muttered, tossing a fry onto her tray. "That's how they do it. When you call out the system, they turn on you." "Are you scared?" Amina asked, eyes wide but not judgmental. Amara paused. Not anymore, she said, quietly. I've already said it. I'm not turning back. Sophia gave her a small nod. We got your back, Amara. You're not alone in this. The next few days were filled with tension. Amara found herself on the phone with reporters, talking to the school's lawyer, and answering messages from students who had been caught in the fallout. Some of them were being suspended. Others were told they wouldn't be allowed to attend prom unless they wrote an apology letter to the school board. The threats felt like a punch to the gut, but Amara refused to be intimidated. She could feel the fight rising in her again. But the question was, how far was she willing to go? On Thursday, the school board scheduled a hearing. It was open to the public. They were going to decide whether to discipline her further, or worse, expel her. The key, whole thing felt like a trial. They were going to judge her for speaking out, for being too loud. Amara had spent hours writing her speech, but when she stood in front of the microphone that afternoon, she didn't need it. She looked out at the crowd, her classmates, her mom, reporters with cameras, and the board members who had already made up their minds. I'm not here to apologize, she said, her voice steady but fierce. I'm not here to beg for forgiveness. I'm here to demand justice, because what happened to me wasn't just about my hair. It was about disrespect. It was about racism. It was about the fact that every day we are told to shrink ourselves, to fit into a world that doesn't want to see us shine. The room fell silent. Even the school board members looked uncomfortable. I am a black girl, with my own identity, my own crown, and I won't let anyone take that from me. And neither should anyone else. We deserve to be heard. We deserve to be respected. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but the words were flowing now, unstoppable. This isn't about me anymore, she continued. It's about every black student who's ever felt invisible. It's about every girl who's been told that her body, her hair, her voice is too much. It's time we start listening. When Amara finished speaking, the room was dead quiet. Then, slowly, the murmurs started. A few claps, a handful of whispers. Then, one by one, students began to rise from their seats. It wasn't just Amara's fight anymore. It was all of theirs. The aftermath of the school board meeting was unlike anything Amara had expected. After her speech, the energy in the room had shifted. The board members didn't know what to say, and for once it seemed like the system had no answer. But Amara wasn't done yet. She didn't need their approval. The applause from the students, the messages from people all over the country, the outpouring of support, that was enough. But it was what happened next that really took her by surprise. The next morning she woke up to a text from Ray. It's happening. Rally, tomorrow. Meet me in front of City Hall, 5 p.m. Let's make this thing loud. Amara stared at the message, heart racing. She hadn't been expecting a rally, not like this, not so soon, but Ray had a point. The voices that had been shouting online were only going to get louder. The hashtag Dear Protect Black Girls had exploded over the past few days, trending in cities across the country. Students were organizing in various parts of the city, coordinating marches, meetups, and rallies. It was growing faster than Amara could keep up with. But the thing was, this wasn't just about hair anymore. It was about something deeper, something rooted in the very fabric of society. At school that day, everyone was talking about it. Are you going to the rally? Maya asked her between classes. Hell yeah, I'm going, Amara replied. This isn't just for me, it's for everyone who's ever been silenced. We're with you, Maya said, her voice firm. We're going to make sure they know. We're here. Amara couldn't help but smile. She had her friends back, her family, her community. And now they were all stepping up together. The rally was held in front of City Hall, and when Amara arrived, she was blown away by what she saw. Hundreds of people, black, white, Latino, Asian, all gathered in solidarity. The crowd stretched. Down the street chanting, holding signs, marching together like a single unified force. The air buzzed with excitement. Amara, Ray called, waving her over. Get in here. Amara jogged through the crowd, her heart pounding with anticipation. This was it. This was the moment that would make everything real. The energy was electric. People were shouting for change, for justice, for equality. The chants rang out loud, hair's not a crime. Black lives matter. Hair matters too. Protect black girls, every single one. It wasn't just a rally anymore, it was a movement, a force that couldn't be ignored. Amara stepped up to the stage, feeling the weight of the crowd on her shoulders. Sophia handed her the mic. The moment she spoke, the crowd fell silent. "This fight isn't just about one girl, one incident, one haircut," Amara said, her voice echoing through the speakers. "This is about every black girl, every woman, every person who's ever been told they don't fit into someone else's box. We are not your stereotypes. We are not your afterthoughts. We are enough." The crowd erupted into cheers. "We're here today because we want the world to see us for who we really are, to understand that our worth is not defined by the way we look, but by the way we stand, the way we fight, the way we love." A deafening cheer rang out, shaking the very ground under her feet. But the pressure wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The media coverage was intense. Everyone was talking about the rally, the protest, and Amara's role in leading it. But not all of it was positive. There were online comments that tried to tear her down, media outlets questioning her, motives trying to find fault in the movement. But Amara knew better now. She wasn't going to let the hate drown out the truth. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just standing up for herself. She was standing up for every girl who had ever been told she wasn't enough. Later that night, she sat on her bed, scrolling through the hashtags. Messages flooded in, some supportive, some critical. But it wasn't the hate that caught her attention. It was a message from an unexpected source. "Amara, we need to talk." "Lucas." She stared at it for a long time. He hadn't even apologized, hadn't said a word since the incident, but now, after everything, he wanted to talk. The message from Lucas sat on Amara's phone like a weight, an unanswered question that she wasn't sure she wanted to face. "Lucas wants to talk." Her fingers hovered over the screen, not sure whether to respond. It had been days since the incident, days since she'd stood in front of the school board, since she'd made her voice heard. So much had changed since then, and yet she could still feel the sting of the scissors on the back of her neck. The decision to meet Lucas wasn't easy. She thought about it all day. The protests, the rallies, the speeches she'd made. She had a cause now, a purpose. There was no room for distractions. There was no room for him. But part of her needed closure. Part of her wanted to know if he had the courage to take responsibility for what he'd done, or if he was just trying to make himself feel better. At 4 p.m., Lucas texted again. "I know I can't undo what happened, but I want to apologize, if you're willing to listen." Amara took a deep breath and finally typed a single word in response. "Okay." The meeting was set for the next day, in the small park near the school, the place where they'd used to hang out in middle school before everything had changed, before high school had turned them into different people. She stood there waiting, arms crossed, tapping her foot against the pavement. She wasn't sure if she was waiting for an apology or a confrontation. Both seemed equally possible. Finally, she saw him. Lucas walked toward her slowly, hands shoved deep into his pockets. His shoulders were tense, his face pale, and his eyes unsure. Like he wasn't sure if he should even be there. He stopped a few feet away, looking at the ground. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I don't know what else to say." Amara didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, waiting. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. Lucas cleared his throat. "I know what I did was wrong. I didn't understand, but I'm trying to." "You think you can just apologize and it's over?" Amara's voice was sharp but not angry. "You think it's that simple?" "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said quickly. "I didn't think it would go this far. I never meant to cut your hair." There was a long silence. Amara took a step back, trying to control the rush of emotion that flooded her chest. "You can't just apologize and act like everything's fine," she said again, her voice shaking now. "This wasn't just about my hair, Lucas. This was about disrespect, about a system that tells me I'm not enough. You didn't just hurt me. You hurt every girl who's ever been told she wasn't good enough, who's been made to feel like she didn't belong." She swallowed hard, her throat tight. "You don't get to apologize and act like you didn't do anything wrong. I'm not your lesson to learn from." Lucas looked at her, his expression mixed with guilt and something like confusion. I don't know how to make it right, but I want to learn, I want to do better, for you, for everyone. Do better, Amara said, her voice growing stronger. This isn't about doing better for me. This is about doing better for yourself. About understanding that your actions have consequences. About taking responsibility for the harm you caused. She paused, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. You don't get to erase it with a simple apology. What you can do is show up. You can use your privilege to fight for us, to fight for me. Lucas was silent, his eyes locked, onto hers as though he was trying to process every word. I'm trying, he said again, quieter this time. Trying isn't enough, Amara responded firmly. You don't get to apologize and expect it all to go away. You have to fight for change. You have to fight for us. Lucas stood there for a long time, his gaze fixed on the ground. Finally, he spoke. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, he said softly. I just wanted you to know I was wrong, and I want to do better. Amara stared at him for a moment longer. There was something different in his voice, but she wasn't sure it was enough. Good, she said, her tone still steady. Now show me. As she walked away from him, the weight of the conversation settled into her bones. She wasn't sure if this was the resolution she'd been hoping for, but she knew one thing for sure. Forgiveness wasn't a gift she was going to give away. Easily. Not to him, not to anyone. The days after her meeting with Lucas felt like a blur. The rally was still fresh in everyone's mind, and the hashtags were everywhere. But Amara knew that her fight wasn't just about making noise. It was about making a lasting impact. That meant doing things her way, on her terms. The first sign that things were escalating came when Amara was called into the principal's office the next morning. Principal Donovan was sitting behind his desk, his face unreadable as she stepped in. Amara, he began, his voice stiff, I need to talk to you about your actions in the past week. Your protest has brought a lot of attention to Jefferson High, and not all of it is the kind we want. She felt a flash of anger flare up inside her, but she kept her voice steady. Not all of it is the kind you want, she said. This wasn't about your reputation. This is about real issues, real harm that's been done. The fact that you're focusing on the attention and not the problem says a lot. Donovan sighed, adjusting his glasses. I understand your passion, Amara, but there are rules. The school has to maintain order, and when students go against those rules, Amara didn't let him finish. When students go against those rules, we get suspended, kicked out, erased, but nothing ever changes. We don't get to fight for what's right unless we break those rules. You can't make change by playing it safe. The tension in the room grew thick. Principal Donovan wasn't going to give up on protecting the school's reputation, but Amara wasn't about to back down either. She'd fought too hard, too long, to let them continue pretending. Like nothing was wrong. I've seen enough, she said, standing tall. I'm not sorry for what I did. I'll never apologize for speaking up, and I'll never stop fighting. She walked out of the office before he could respond, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of everything she was fighting for was starting to hit her harder now. She couldn't afford to be afraid anymore. That afternoon, the school board sent a letter to her mother, outlining the disciplinary actions they were considering. They were threatening expulsion. It felt like the walls were closing in on her. For the first time since this whole thing started, Amara questioned what it was going to cost her to win. Could she afford to keep fighting? Was it worth the price she'd have to pay? She spent the next day thinking about Lucas, thinking about the apology that didn't feel like enough. Lucas might have wanted to make things right, but the truth was, this wasn't just about him. This was about everyone who had ever been told to stay quiet, to stay in line. But that didn't change the fact that Amara's future was now on the line. Expulsion meant no graduation, no college. It meant she could lose everything. That night, Amara sat with her mother at the kitchen table. Her mom didn't say anything at first, just watching Amara with a quiet strength that felt like a steady anchor in the storm. Mom, Amara started, her voice tight. They're threatening to expel me. Her mom nodded slowly but didn't look surprised. I know, I saw the letter. They're trying to make an example out of you. Maybe I should just back down. Maybe I should just apologize and move on. This is too much." Her mother reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "Amara, I want you to listen to me carefully. You don't owe anyone an apology. You've stood up for what's right, and that takes courage. You can't let fear dictate your choices. Don't let them silence you." "But I can't afford to lose." "Everything," Amara whispered, the weight of the decision pressing on her. "You're stronger than that. You're fighting for something bigger than your high school diploma or your popularity. You're fighting for your future and for the future of others who've been made to feel small. You don't have to be afraid of the consequences. You have to decide what kind of person you want to be." Amara felt tears well up in her eyes. "I don't know if I can do it. I'm scared." Her mom squeezed her hand. "You don't have to do it alone. We're with you. You don't have to carry this weight by yourself." The next day, Amara went to school with her head held high. She walked past the students, whispering and staring, feeling the eyes on her as she made her way to her locker. It felt like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. When she opened her locker, there was a note inside. It was from Sophia. "We're with you, Amara. Always. To protect black girls. When we see you." Amara's heart swelled with gratitude. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all of them. All of them standing together, demanding to be heard. That afternoon, Amara went to the rally in front of City Hall. This time, it wasn't just her. The crowd was even bigger. Students, teachers, parents, even strangers who had seen the story. In the news, Amara took the stage again, the mic heavy in her hand. "This fight isn't over," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "We will not be silenced. We will keep pushing, keep demanding justice. This is bigger than me. This is for every person who's been told their worth doesn't matter. This is for every black girl who's ever been told she doesn't belong." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices filling the air. The next day, Amara received a call from the school board. They wanted to meet with her. The disciplinary hearing was scheduled, but this time, Amara wasn't backing down. She had a choice to make, and she was going to stand by it. She wasn't afraid anymore. The call came just hours after Amara had spoken at the rally. The school board had officially scheduled her hearing, and it was set for that afternoon. It wasn't going to be a typical meeting. It was going to be a showdown, the kind where they decided whether she would be expelled or allowed to stay. The weight of it all felt suffocating. That morning, Amara tried to focus on her classes, but it was impossible. Every passing minute felt like a countdown. She couldn't stop thinking about the consequences, her future, the rally, the thousands of people who were watching her every move. Her phone buzzed. It was Ray. "You're not alone. We're all with you. Do your thing. Show them who you are." Amara smiled, but the nerves gnawed at her. Ray was right. She wasn't alone, but she had no idea what she was walking into today. The hearing was being held in a small room on the second floor of the school district's headquarters. As she walked into the room, Amara's heart raced. The air felt thick, tense, and cold. Principal Donovan was seated at the head of the table, his arms crossed. Next to him were a few school board members, all older, all staring at her like she was some kind of problem to be solved. There was a seat across from him, and Amara took it without hesitation. She sat tall, shoulders straight, eyes steady. Donovan cleared his throat. "Amara, thank you for coming today. We know this situation has brought a lot of attention to Jefferson High. Some of it good, but much of it negative. As you know, there have been serious consequences for your actions." "I know," Amara replied, her voice firm. "I'm not here to apologize for speaking out. I'm here to defend why I did it." The room went quiet. Donovan and the board members exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by her bluntness. One of the board members, a woman with short grey hair and thick glasses, spoke up. "This is not just about what happened at that rally. This is about the disruption you've caused at school, the protests, the tension. You've made it impossible for the school to function normally. The rules have to be followed. What you've done is a violation." Amara didn't flinch. "What I've done is bring attention to a broken system, to a system that punishes students like me for existing, for being who we are. I didn't ask to be in this position, but I'm not backing down now that I'm here." Donovan leaned forward, And what about the violence, the anger, the disrespect, the way you've attacked your fellow students? I didn't start the fight, Amara said, her tone growing colder, but I'll finish it. This isn't about me. This is about every student who's been overlooked, disrespected, and silenced. You can't fix a broken system by sweeping the mess under the rug. There was a pause. Another board member, a man with a thick mustache, cleared his throat. This isn't just about your personal feelings, Amara. It's about the school's integrity. If we allow one student to get away with these kinds of actions, we set a dangerous precedent. Amara's eyes narrowed. Is that what this is about? The school's integrity? Or is it about protecting the people who created a culture that allows racism and discrimination to thrive? I didn't break the system. I exposed it. The room fell silent. Amara's words hung in the air, her voice steady and unwavering. It was the first time anyone had said it like that, and she wasn't backing down. Just as the silence stretched, a voice came from the back of the room. "Amara, can I speak?" It was her mother, standing at the doorway. She had arrived just in time, and her presence was like a shield. The board. Members looked surprised, but they didn't stop her as she walked to Amara's side. Amara's mom placed a hand on her shoulder, her eyes filled with pride. "I've been listening to this conversation, and I need to say something. I've raised my daughter to fight for what's right. She wasn't looking for attention. She was fighting for the dignity of every child who has ever felt like they didn't matter. She was fighting for a better future, and I will not let anyone tell her she's wrong for that." The room was dead silent now, the weight of her words impossible to ignore. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances, their arguments faltering. Amara's mother continued. "You can expel her if you want, but you cannot expel the truth. You cannot erase the voices of the students who stand with her." The board looked at each other for a long moment. Amara's heart was pounding in her chest. She had spoken her truth. She had fought for herself, for every black girl who had been wronged, for every student who had ever been made to feel small, and she wasn't going to back down. Finally, Principal Donovan spoke again, but his tone had shifted. "We will discuss this matter further. You'll hear from us soon." Amara stood up, her shoulders squared, ready to leave. Her mother squeezed her hand. As they walked out of the room, the weight of the meeting was still heavy on Amara's shoulders. But she had made her point. She had fought for herself, and she had fought for every person who had ever felt like they didn't belong. The waiting was unbearable. The hearing had ended nearly 2 days ago, but Amara's mind raced constantly. Every moment felt like an eternity, and she found herself constantly checking her phone, hoping for some sign, some message, something that would tell her what was next. She knew the school board was taking its time. They were deliberating, analyzing everything she had said, everything her mom had said, and of course the protests, the rally, the media coverage. This wasn't going to be an easy decision. That morning, Amara found herself standing outside in front of Jefferson High, staring at the doors that had once felt like her second home. She had walked these halls for years, and now it felt like she was on the outside looking in. Her thoughts were interrupted by a buzz in her pocket. She pulled out her phone. It was a text from Ray. "You ready for this? No matter what, we've got your back. You're a queen." Amara's heart swelled, but the fear still sat heavily in her chest. She stared at the screen for a moment before typing back, "I'm ready. I have to be." As she walked into school, the whispers began again. Students who had once ignored her were now watching her every move. Some faces were sympathetic, others were hostile. The atmosphere had shifted from curiosity to unease. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Amara's mom had warned her that the fallout would be messy, but nothing could prepare her for the weight of it. She stepped into the school courtyard, the place where she had once eaten lunch with her friends, where she had laughed and joked like any other student. But today, everything felt different. A voice called out to her, "Amara!" She turned and saw Lucas standing by the entrance of the school. He looked more nervous than usual. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, his eyes downcast. "I heard," he said quietly. I wanted to say, I hope it goes the way you want it to." Amara hesitated. "Thanks," she said, her voice flat. "I appreciate it." Lucas took a step forward. "I didn't want things to go down like this. I was wrong, and I know it. But I want you to know that I'm on your side. I'll do what I can to make it right." Amara stared at him for a long moment. She wasn't sure what to make of his apology. After everything, after the betrayal, the bullying, the way he'd humiliated her in front of everyone, was it enough? Was this all he had to offer? "I don't know if I can just forgive you, Lucas," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." He nodded, his face shadowed by regret. "I get it." At 3 more p.m., Amara's phone buzzed. Again. This time it was a notification from the school district's official email. The decision had been made. Her heart raced as she opened the message. "Dear Amara, after careful deliberation and consideration of the events that transpired, the board has come to a decision regarding your future at Jefferson High. We acknowledge the concerns raised in your protest and recognize the need for change within the school community. However, after reviewing the disruptions caused and the impact on the learning environment, we have decided that you will be suspended for 2 weeks. We also acknowledge your right to freedom of speech and your efforts to bring attention to important issues. Moving forward, we encourage you to continue advocating for change, but within the guidelines of the school's policies. You are expected to return to school after the suspension. Sincerely, the Jefferson High School District Board." The words blurred. As Amara read the email again and again, she had been suspended, but she hadn't been expelled. It wasn't a complete victory, but it wasn't a complete loss either. They hadn't crushed her spirit, not yet. She exhaled deeply, the tension in her chest slowly easing. The rest of the day felt surreal. It was hard to process what had just happened. Her heart still thudded in her chest, the weight of the decision still settling over her. She had been suspended 2 weeks, but the relief of not being expelled, of not being forced out of school, for good, filled her with a small but undeniable sense of victory. When Amara got home, her mom was waiting for her with a smile. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice full of hope. "I'm suspended," Amara replied, her voice a mix of exhaustion and relief. 2 weeks, but I'm not expelled. Not yet." Her mom's smile widened, and she pulled Amara into a tight hug. "You did it. You fought. You stood your ground. You've shown them what it means to be strong." Amara closed her eyes, savoring the moment. The weight wasn't gone, but it felt lighter somehow. That evening the phone rang. Amara's heart skipped a beat as she saw the name on the screen. It was Lucas. She hesitated for a second, then answered, "Hey, Amara. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you," Lucas said quietly. "You didn't let them break. You stood up for yourself, for everyone." Amara paused. "Thanks," she said softly. "It's not over, but I'm not done yet." The next morning felt strange. Amara had never been suspended before. She'd never had to stay home from school for something like this. The quiet of her room, without the hum of her classmates and the constant rush of the hallways, left her, feeling lost. Yet she knew that for the first time in a long time, she had a chance to reflect, to think clearly about everything that had happened and what was coming next. She wasn't done fighting. Far from it. Amara spent the next 2 days resting, but not in the way everyone expected. She didn't spend the time feeling sorry for herself or wallowing in frustration. Instead, she made plans. She brainstormed what came next. She would use her suspension as an opportunity to organize. There were students out there just like her who felt powerless. She could reach them. She could show them how to turn their anger into something powerful, something that couldn't be ignored. By the 3rd day, Amara was back at her computer, firing off emails to teachers, to students who had joined her. Rally to the local news outlets that had covered her story. She wasn't just going to sit out for 2 weeks. She would make this time count. One email she sent out, though, stood out the most. To Ray, Lucas, and the others. "Hey all, I've been thinking. It's time to take this to the next level. The school board might have suspended me, but I'm not. Done? We can't let them think this is over. Let's organize a community meeting. We'll talk about what's really going on at Jefferson High and what needs to change. This is bigger than me. It's bigger than just one fight. It's about all of us, Amara. She hit send, feeling a surge of determination. She had no idea how many would show up. She didn't even know what would come of it. But what she did know was that it was time to keep pushing forward. The next day, Amara heard back from Ray and Lucas. Ray's message was full of excitement and support, while Lucas was more subdued but equally enthusiastic. The group had agreed to meet that Saturday afternoon at a local community center. It was small, but it would work. Saturday arrived, and Amara walked into the community center with a mix of nerves and excitement. She'd never organized anything this big before. What if no one showed up? What if they didn't care? But when she entered the room, she was stunned. There were more people than she expected. Not just students from Jefferson High, but also parents, teachers, and even some local activists. The turnout was overwhelming. Ray was there, of course, as well as Lucas, who had his usual nervous energy. He was pacing back and forth by the door, looking like he was about to explode from anticipation. "Amara, this is incredible," Ray said as she rushed over to her. "Look at this turnout." "I didn't expect this," Amara admitted, her voice filled with awe. "Why? You're a leader. People are listening." Amara smiled. Ray always knew how to lift her spirits. As the meeting began, Amara stood at the front of the room, feeling a quiet sense of power she'd never felt before. Her heart was pounding, but this time it was excitement, not fear. She had something to say, and she had an audience ready to listen. She started by addressing the crowd. "We're here today because we've had enough. We're tired of being ignored, tired of being treated like we don't matter. And we're ready to change that. What happened to me, what happened to so many of you, that's not a one-time event. It's part of a pattern, a system that's been in place for too long." The room was silent and all eyes were on her. "We don't just want apologies. We want change. We want to see action. And I'm not just talking about a few policies here and there. I'm talking about a complete overhaul of how this school treats its students. We deserve better." The crowd erupted in applause, and Amara felt a surge of pride. This was it. This was what she had been fighting for, to be heard. The rest of the meeting was filled with ideas, discussions, and plans. They talked about organizing protests, creating petitions, and pushing for the school board to listen to the voices of the students. There was even talk of a sit-in at the school district office, demanding a meeting with the board. For the first time since her suspension, Amara felt like she was in control of the situation. She was no longer just the student who had been pushed to the edge. She was the one leading the charge. Later that night, Amara sat in her room, scrolling through social media. Her story had spread even further than before. Her suspension, the rally, and now this community meeting. It was all over the local news. People were starting to take notice, not just of her, but of the movement she was igniting. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her mum. "I'm so proud of you, baby. You're doing exactly what you were meant to do." Amara smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something much bigger. The following week felt like a whirlwind. Amara spent hours every day working on the plans she'd laid out during the community meeting. It wasn't enough to just speak out. She needed to make sure the school board heard her, that the community knew her cause, and that the media would continue to amplify her message. The email inboxes, group chats, and phone calls had never been more constant. But there was a catch. Every move she made now felt like it was under a microscope. Her every word and action was being analyzed. Amara could sense the growing tension, not only among the administration, but also with students who were against her message. She had become a symbol, and with that came all kinds of pressure. By Thursday, Amara was sitting in the living room of her house, laptop open in front of her, scanning through the schedule for the protest planned for the following week. It was big, too big to ignore even by the school's standards. Her mum, who had been supportive from the start, walked in with a worried look on her face. "You've been at this all day, Amara. You're not thinking about pushing too hard, are you?" Her mum's voice was gentle but filled with concern. Amara looked up at her, feeling the weight of her words. "What do you mean?" "I'm just saying, you're stirring up a lot. You've got the media watching, the school board, your classmates, and now You've got the people who don't want you to succeed. I know you believe in what you're doing, but are you ready for what comes next? What if this backfires? Amara took a deep breath, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She understood her mom's worries. Everything had escalated so quickly, and she was starting to feel the enormity of what she was attempting. But this was bigger than fear. It was about standing up for herself, for every student who had felt dismissed or ignored. "Mom," she said softly, "this is bigger than me. I can't back down now. If I do, it'll be like nothing ever happened, and I've worked too hard for that." Her mom paused, then nodded. "I know. Just be careful, okay?" "I will," Amara promised, though even she wasn't sure what careful looked like anymore. That night, the protest flyers were printed, ready to be handed out. The event would take place in the school's courtyard, the very spot where everything had started. The protest was set to coincide with the school board's next public meeting, and Amara planned on making sure everyone knew exactly why they were there. As she distributed flyers the next day, she could feel the weight of the stares. Some students smiled and took the paper, others just scoffed or shook their heads. There were even a few who turned their backs completely. Amara knew she couldn't expect everyone to agree with her, but it still stung to be the target of so much hostility. But there was something else happening too. More and more students, many of whom Amara hadn't even spoken to before, came up to her, some offering support, some telling her they were in the fight alongside her. Amara smiled at them, giving them a quiet nod. This was what mattered. The day of the protest arrived, and it was unlike anything Amara had experienced. The courtyard, which once felt like a place for lunch and casual hangouts, was now the stage for something much larger. Students filled the space, most of them wearing matching t-shirts with the phrase, "We stand with Amara," printed across the front. It felt surreal, as if the world had shifted in her favor. She stood at the front, microphone in hand, as the crowd gathered. Her heart was pounding. She knew this moment would be one of the defining moments of her life. But there was something else that fueled her: determination. She had worked too hard, risked too much to back down now. As the clock ticked toward the beginning of the protest, the tension rose. Students looked to her, waiting for her to speak. She took a deep breath and stepped up to the mic. "Today, we stand together not just for me, but for every student who has ever been told they don't matter," Amara began, her voice steady and strong. "We stand here today because we believe in a school that listens, a school that protects, a school where everyone can thrive." The crowd erupted into applause. "We're here because we demand change. We are not going to let the school board ignore us any longer. We will not let them silence our voices. We are more than just our struggles, and we are the future." The cheers grew louder, and for a moment, Amara felt like she was floating. This was her moment, the beginning of the change she had always dreamed of. But just as the momentum started to build, the unmistakable sound of police sirens cut through the air. A chill ran down Amara's spine. She wasn't expecting this. Not like this. The first officer stepped onto the scene, followed by another, then a third. They stood at the edge of the courtyard, watching silently, waiting to see what would happen next. The sight of them made Amara's stomach drop. She had known the risks. She knew this protest could get messy. But seeing the officers there, ready to crack down, was a reminder that the stakes had just gotten higher. "Amara," Ray shouted from the crowd, her voice full of urgency, "we need to finish what we started." Amara took another breath, steadied her heart, and continued to speak, louder now, determined not to let the police or anything else stop her. "We are here to demand respect. We are here because we believe we deserve better. And we will not back down." The police were standing in the middle of the courtyard, their presence more than enough to send a wave of tension through the crowd. Amara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. What started as a peaceful protest now threatened to turn into something much more dangerous. Her heart raced. She had never anticipated this. The plan was simple: to speak out, to demand change. But now, with the officers glaring at her, the entire school watching, and the media filming, the stakes were higher than ever. "Amara," Ray called out, again, her voice rising over the noise. "Don't back down, we can do this." Amara looked out at the sea of faces in the crowd, each one filled with hope, fear, and anticipation. The last thing she wanted was for this protest to turn into a riot. She knew that if things escalated, it could make everything they had fought for disappear in an instant. The officer in charge stepped forward. He was tall, with a stern face that matched the rigid posture of the other officers standing behind him. "You need to disperse immediately," he ordered, his voice loud enough to be heard over the murmurs of the crowd. "This protest is now an illegal assembly. If you do not comply, we will be forced to make arrests." The words hit Amara like a punch in the stomach. Arrests. She couldn't believe it was coming to this. They were being threatened, just for standing up for what was right. She had been preparing for everything else, but the media, the opposition from the school board, the insults. But this was different. This was a moment where her actions would define everything. Amara's mind raced as the crowd fell silent, waiting for her to respond. The pressure was suffocating, and for a moment she considered backing down, calling it off. But the thought of doing so felt wrong. She had already come this far. She couldn't just let it all fall apart. She stepped forward, ignoring the knot in her stomach, and took the mic. The silence in the courtyard was deafening. Even the police officers were watching her now. "Everyone," Amara's voice rang out, clear and steady, "we're not here to cause trouble. We're not here to fight. We're here because we believe in something. We're here because we deserve to be heard, and we won't stop until that happens." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement. The officers were still staring, their eyes cold and impassive. Amara's heart was pounding in her chest, but she didn't back down. "I know you're scared," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "I know the thought of what's happening right now might make you feel like we should just walk away. But if we do that, we'll be saying that our voices don't matter, that the system can do whatever it wants, and we have to accept it." Few students shouted out in support, their voices rising above the stillness. Amara could feel their energy fueling her, giving her the strength she needed. "We are not just a group of angry students. We are the future. We will not be silenced and we will not be intimidated. No matter what happens here, we are going to keep fighting." The officers didn't move, but the tension in the air thickened. It was as if time had stopped. Amara stood there waiting, her eyes locked on the police and her heart in her throat. She wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but she knew she had to stand her ground. If she gave in now, it would feel like a betrayal to everything they had fought for. Suddenly, one of the officers spoke again, this time in a softer tone. "We're just doing our job. This protest isn't allowed here. We're giving you a chance to leave peacefully." Amara's grip on the microphone tightened. She knew this was it, the defining moment. She could feel the weight of every decision she had ever made leading to this one. She took a deep breath, glanced at Ray, who nodded at her, and turned back to face the crowd. "No," she said firmly. "We're not leaving. Not until we're heard." The crowd erupted into cheers. The officers exchanged looks, but neither of them moved. It was clear that they were caught in a difficult position. They could force the students to leave, possibly incite a confrontation, or they could stand down. Amara had taken control of the situation, at least for now. For the next few minutes it felt like everything was suspended in time. Amara was standing there, surrounded by a group of students who had each chosen to stand with her. Their voices united in one powerful chorus. She could see the media cameras flashing, capturing the moment for the world to see. She could see the way her peers were looking at her, not with fear but with admiration. They were looking at her as a leader, as someone who had shown them that it was okay to fight back. Then something unexpected happened. The principal, Mrs. Daniels, appeared at the edge of the courtyard, flanked by two other administrators. She had an expression of frustration, but there was a glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. "Amara," Mrs. Daniels called, her voice cutting through the noise. "I need to talk to you." Amara stepped forward, her heart racing again. "What's there to talk about, Mrs. Daniels?" she asked, her tone unwavering. "You're making a scene," Mrs. Daniels said, trying to maintain control. "This protest, it's not the way to handle this. There are other ways to get your message across." Amara shook her head. "This is the way. You've had your chance to listen, but you've ignored us. We're not going to be quiet anymore. The E. Tension between the two of them was palpable. The protest had turned into something larger than either of them could have predicted. Mrs. Daniels, the person who had always seemed to represent the authority of the school, was now forced to confront the strength of the students she had dismissed for so long. "I want to meet with you," Mrs. Daniels said, her voice softer now. "Not here, though. Not in front of everyone. Let's talk privately. We can find a solution." Amara didn't want to trust her. She didn't want to fall for another empty promise. But something in Mrs. Daniels' tone made Amara hesitate. "I'll agree to talk," Amara said slowly. "But it's not just going to be the two of us. If you want to talk, you'll talk to all of us. We're all here for a reason." The crowd cheered again. Amara had managed to force a meeting with the administration, but she wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. As the officers left, the courtyard and the crowd slowly began to disperse. Amara couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. She had stood her ground. She had led them to this moment. And she wasn't done yet. The meeting was set for the following day, an official sit-down between Amara and the school administration. It was supposed to be a moment of reconciliation, a chance for Amara to finally make her case in a way that couldn't be ignored. But as she walked toward the principal's office that afternoon, Amara knew this wouldn't be just another talk. This was the moment where everything could either change or fall apart. Amara entered the principal's office, the cold, sterile air immediately giving her an uncomfortable feeling. It was as if the walls were closing in, pressing on her with the weight of every student, every injustice and every battle she'd fought so far. She was tired, emotionally drained from the past week of protests, media coverage, and the constant threat of retaliation. Seated around the table were Mrs. Daniels, the principal, Mr. Thompson, the vice principal, and a representative from the school board. Their faces were stoic, each of them trying their best to appear neutral, but Amara could see the tension in their eyes. They had underestimated her, and now they were about to pay the price. Her heart was racing, but she refused to show it. She had learned that the power of control in any room came from confidence, confidence she had to fake, at least at first. "Amara," Mrs. Daniels began, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us today. I know tensions have been high, and we wanted to find a way to move forward together." Amara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a seat, her posture straight, her hands folded on the table. "You've had plenty of chances to fix this. You've had plenty of chances to listen, but you didn't. So now we're here." The room grew quiet. The other administrators exchanged uncomfortable glances, but they didn't interrupt. Amara's voice carried through the space, powerful and clear. "I'm here because I believe in something. I believe that every student at this school deserves respect. That means respecting their culture, their identity, and their space. And I'm here because you and the rest of the administration have failed us." Mrs. Daniels opened her mouth to speak, but Amara wasn't done. She needed to lay out everything. All the hurt, all the struggles, all the unanswered calls for help. "You've ignored us for too long," she continued, her tone growing stronger. "When my hair was cut by a bully, it wasn't just a personal attack. It was a reminder of how the school has treated me and every other student who doesn't fit the mold. This isn't about me. It's about every single kid who's been told they don't belong here." Her words hit the administrators like a physical blow, and for the first time Amara saw the smallest cracks in their carefully constructed defenses. The tension in the room was palpable, but the question still remained. Would they truly change? Or was this just another attempt to calm the situation? Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, his voice steady but clearly on edge. "Amara, we understand your frustration, but what you're asking for, it's a big change. We need to take time to process all of this. We can't just flip a switch." "Time?" Amara repeated incredulously. "How much time do you need? Years? Decades? We've already been waiting for change that never comes. I've had enough of waiting. We've all had enough." Silence followed her outburst. The administrators seemed taken aback by her intensity, but Amara wasn't about to soften her stance. Not now, not when everything was on the line. "We need real action," she demanded. "We need policies in place that protect students. need diversity training for teachers and staff so this doesn't happen again. And we need accountability for what happened to me. And what's been happening to so many others who've been silenced. The representative from the school board, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a stern expression, spoke up. We'll consider your demands, Amara, but you need to understand this isn't something that can be changed overnight. The school has rules, and not all of them are in your favor. Amara narrowed her eyes. She could feel the frustration building again, but she held it back, controlling the wave of anger that threatened to spill over. That's the problem, she said. The rules are set up to favor some students and leave others behind. The system is broken. You've given us enough time to prove our worth, but you never once listened. Not until we made noise. Her words hung in the air. There was no more room for compromise or softening the truth. Amara knew this wasn't just about getting the administration to do the right thing. It was about making sure they could never ignore students like her again. For a moment, the room remained silent. Then, to Amara's surprise, Mrs. Daniels spoke in a softer tone. You're right, Amara. The system needs to change, and we're willing to work with you on that. We'll put together a task force to address the concerns you've raised. We'll meet with you regularly to make sure we're making progress. Amara's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't let herself get excited just yet. She had been promised before, and it never amounted to anything. I'll believe it when I see it, Amara replied, her voice steady. You have one shot at this. If you fail, I won't just stand by and watch. I'll keep fighting. Mrs. Daniels nodded slowly, a sign of acknowledgement, but Amara wasn't convinced. The meeting ended shortly after that, with a tentative agreement to set up a follow-up meeting in a week's time. Amara left the principal's office with her head held high, but inside she was torn. She had pushed as hard as she could, but was this enough? Was the administration really ready to change? Or was this just another attempt to placate her for a little while? As she walked out of the building and into the fading sunlight, Ray caught up with her. How did it go? Ray asked, her eyes full of concern. Amara took a deep breath. They said they'll make changes, but I'm not holding my breath. Ray gave her a look of understanding. You did good, Amara. We did good. But Amara wasn't sure. She knew the fight wasn't over. She wasn't going to rest until real, tangible change was made. And even then, she would keep fighting for the students who couldn't fight for themselves. The days following the meeting with the administration were filled with uncertainty. Amara felt the weight of every promise and every word she had spoken in that room. The school had agreed to make changes, but Amara wasn't convinced. She knew better than to trust empty words without action. She had seen too many broken promises in her life. It had been 5 days since the meeting, and Amara had yet to hear anything from the school board. The task force they promised had not been formed, and there were no updates on the policies they had discussed. It felt like the whole situation was starting to slip through her fingers. Amara had hoped for immediate results, but the reality was much harsher. She was sitting on the steps of the school building, looking out at the empty courtyard where the protest had taken place. Her mind raced with thoughts of what needed to be done. She couldn't wait around forever, hoping that the administration would follow through on their promises. She had to keep pushing. But how? Ray walked up to her, her face thoughtful. Hey, have you heard from them yet? Amara shook her head. No, they said they'd get back to us, but so far nothing. I'm starting to think they're just stalling. Ray sat down beside her, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. Don't let them win, Amara. You've already done so much. You've led this fight, and you've made them notice us. You've made them afraid of what we can do together. Amara looked at her friend, feeling a small spark of hope. Ray was right. They had made an impact, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I know, Amara said, her voice firm. But I'm not stopping until I see real change. I didn't get this far just to back down now. Ray nodded in agreement. So what's the next step? Amara sat quietly for a moment, thinking. She knew that if the administration wasn't going to act on their own, it was time to take matters into her own hands. They had made their promises, but now it was time for Amara to remind them of their responsibility. Tomorrow, Amara said, determination in her voice. We're going to organize another protest, but this time we're going bigger. We're going to get the media involved, show them that we're not backing down. Ray's eyes widened with surprise. Another protest? Are you sure? The last one was already huge, but if we do this again, it could get ugly. Amara stood up, her mind made up. I don't care. If they think they can ignore us again, they're wrong. This fight isn't over until we see change. I'm not waiting for them to do the right thing. We're going to make them. The next morning, Amara and Ray began organizing. They called up students, friends, and allies. They reached out to the media, contacting local news stations to get the word out. They created flyers, posted on social media, and spread the word as quickly as they could. It was a long, tiring process, but Amara was driven. She wouldn't stop until the administration was forced to act. As the clock ticked down to the afternoon, Amara could feel the excitement building. The protest was going to be massive. She could sense it. It was going to be bigger than anything they had done before. And this time they were going to make sure the world was watching. When the bell rang to signal the end of the school day, the courtyard was already filling up with students. News reporters stood at the edges, cameras in hand, ready to capture whatever would unfold. There was an energy in the air, a feeling of anticipation and defiance. Amara stood at the front, watching as her peers gathered. Ray was by her side, her face filled with resolve. The administration was sure to notice this time. We're here, Amara said, her voice clear and commanding, because we won't be silenced. We've been ignored for far too long, and now it's time for change. She stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding in her chest. We will not back down until we see real policies that protect students of color, that address the bullying, and that hold people accountable. This is our school, and we won't let anyone make us feel less than. We will not be ignored. The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices a thunderous chorus. Amara's heart soared. She could see the faces of her fellow students. They were standing with her, they were standing together. The power of their unity was undeniable, but just as the protest reached its peak, the administrators appeared at the edge of the courtyard. Mrs. Daniels, Mr. Thompson, and several other staff members walked forward, their faces tense. They had come to try to stop this before it got out of hand. Amara felt a rush of anger. They were here to suppress them again, to control the narrative. But this time Amara wasn't afraid. Amara, Mrs. Daniels called out, her voice trying to cut through the noise. We've heard you, but this protest, it's not helping. We've already promised to make changes. We're doing what we can. Amara stepped forward, her eyes locked with Mrs. Daniels. You promised us, but we haven't seen any change. You're still trying to control the situation. You don't get to dictate how we fight for our rights. The tension between them was palpable, the crowd holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Amara stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to back down now. We will keep fighting until we see real action, Amara declared. And we will not stop. For a moment there was silence. The administrators exchanged nervous glances, and Amara's heart raced, knowing the situation could escalate quickly. But something unexpected happened. Mrs. Daniels, for the first time in this entire struggle, lowered her gaze, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. She looked back at Amara and the crowd, then took a deep breath. You're right, Mrs. Daniels said quietly. We have not done enough. We will make the changes you've asked for. But you have to give us a chance to act. Amara was stunned. She hadn't expected this, not from Mrs. Daniels, not from the school. For the first time, it seemed like they might actually be listening. But she couldn't let her guard down. This was just the beginning. Fine, Amara said, her voice steady but firm. But we'll be watching, and if you don't follow through, we'll be back. The protest ended that day with a sense of cautious optimism. The administration had agreed to act. But Amara knew that their word was only as good as their actions. She wasn't going to let up. Not now, not ever. The days following the protest felt like a whirlwind. The administration had agreed to make changes, but Amara knew that promises meant little without action. The media coverage had been extensive, and the entire school district was now under intense scrutiny. There was no turning back. They had made their promises, and Amara was determined to hold them accountable. Amara sat at her desk that evening, the weight of the past few weeks crashing down on her. It felt like every moment had been building toward this one, this final moment, when she would either see change or watch the system swallow her efforts whole. She stared at the pile of papers on her desk, filled with her notes, plans and ideas for how to keep the pressure on the administration. But even with all her planning, there was still a knot in her stomach. What if they were just stringing her along, buying time until things blew over? Ray knocked on the door, poking her head inside. "You okay?" Amara looked up, offering a tired smile. "Yeah, just thinking." Ray entered the room, taking a seat beside her. "I get it. This is a lot. But you've done more than anyone thought you could. You've already won, Amara." Amara shook her head. "Not yet. Not until they prove it." Ray sighed, glancing at the papers. "You're right. But just remember, this whole thing started because of you. You sparked it, and now they're listening. They never would have heard us before. You made this happen." Amara leaned back in her chair, trying to let those words sink in. She had indeed made a difference. It wasn't just about the school anymore. It was about her community, her friends, her family. It was about showing every person who had ever been ignored that they didn't have to accept it. "I'm just scared it won't stick," Amara admitted. "What if they only change because we made them look bad? What if they don't actually care?" Ray's gaze softened. "You can't control what they do, but you can control what you do, and you've already shown them what real change looks like. Whether they like it or not, they can't unsee what we've done." The next day, Amara stood outside the school, waiting for the meeting with the administration. This time, it was different. This time, the stakes were higher. They had promised to take action, and now it was time to see whether they would follow through. Ray stood beside her, offering a reassuring smile. "You've got this. You've already made your mark." Amara nodded, but didn't feel the same. Confidence. Today would be the real test. Inside the principal's office, the tension was palpable. Mrs. Daniels sat across from Amara, her expression serious but not defensive. Mr. Thompson and the school board representative were there too, their faces grim. It was clear that they understood how much was riding on this meeting. Amara didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You promised change. It's time to show us what you've done." The administrators exchanged uneasy glances, but it was Mrs. Daniels who spoke first. "We've taken steps to address your concerns, Amara. We've established a new task, forced to review the bullying policies and introduce mandatory diversity training for all faculty members. We've also set up anonymous reporting systems for students to report incidents of discrimination without fear of retaliation." Amara's heart raced. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. She had been promised action before, and it had always fallen short. "That's a start," Amara said, her voice steady. "But what about the students who've already been hurt? What about the people who've faced real consequences because of the system you've created? Are you going to just sweep that under the rug?" Mrs. Daniels hesitated. "We're working on a plan to address past incidents as well. It will take time, but we're committed to making things right." Amara shook her head. "Time. You keep saying that. But how much time are we supposed to wait? How many more students have to suffer before something changes?" Mr. Thompson spoke up, his tone firmer. "We understand your frustration, Amara, but we're not going to fix everything overnight. This is a process." Amara stood up, her emotions rising. "It's not just about fixing things. It's about accountability. You can't just change a few policies and think everything will be okay. You've got to show us that you're willing to do the hard work, that you're willing to stand up for the students who have been silenced." She could feel the anger bubbling up inside her, the same anger that had fueled the protests, the same anger that had kept her fighting for so long. She wasn't going to let them sweep this under the rug. Not now. Not when they were so close. "Amara," Mrs. Daniels said, her voice softer, "we're committed to doing better. We hear you and we understand how important this is, but we need your help. We need you to work with us to make these changes happen." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Amara considered them. She had spent so long fighting against the system, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to work with them. The battle had taken its toll on her, and as much as she hated to admit it, She knew that change would only come if they worked together. But that didn't mean she was going to stop pushing. It didn't mean she was going to forget the countless students who had been hurt before her. "I'll help," she said slowly. "But don't think for a second that I'll let you off the hook. We're watching. And if you fail to deliver, we'll be back. And we'll be stronger." The meeting ended on a tense but hopeful note. Amara left the principal's office with a heavy heart, but also a sense of purpose. She knew this fight wasn't over. It would never be over until real lasting change had been made. But now she had a seat at the table. She had a voice in the conversation. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like a victory. As Amara walked out of the school, Ray was waiting for her by the entrance. "How'd it go?" Amara smiled, though it was small. "It's a start, but we're not done yet." He gave her a nod of understanding. "You've come so far, Amara. And you're not alone in this. We're with you all the way." Amara took a deep breath as she looked out at the horizon. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she had already taken the first step. And with the support of her friends, her family, and every student who had stood beside her, she knew that nothing could stop her. The fight for justice had just begun, and Amara would keep pushing no matter what. Because in the end, it wasn't just about changing the rules. It was about changing hearts. And that was something worth fighting for. Epilogue. A year later, the school had implemented new policies and had even appointed Amara as a student advisor to the newly formed diversity task force. The road had been long, and the work was far from finished, but Amara knew that real change was possible. She stood in front of a new generation of students, sharing her story and reminding them that no matter the obstacles, their voices mattered. Change didn't happen overnight, but it started with one person who was willing to fight for what was right. And Amara had done just that. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?